This is Vivo's new mid-range phone, the V27. There's also the V27 Pro, but unfortunately, DHL sent that back. It got stuck in customs. Long story short, I won't be covering that one, but this here, which is the cheaper model. Now, it has a 50 megapixel main camera on the rear, 50 megapixel selfie camera that can even shoot in 4K video and has autofocus. This phone is powered by the Dimensity 7200. My model that Vivo sent out to me has 8 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigabytes of storage. It's UFS 2.2 spec, and we do have 66 watt charging with a 4600 milliamp hour battery. Now the screen is 6.78 inches. It's a AMOLED display, 120 Hz, and does support HDR10+. Inside the box, you will find an 80-watt charger. It is their Vivo Supercharge, but the phone charges at 66 watts. Then we've got our Type-C to Type-A cable, a SIM tray tool, important information and warranty card, and then a clear TPU case. The V27 does have this glass back on it. We've seen it before that changes the color of it with UV light, and I like it. It's different. It's something that is not like what other brands are doing. They're normally just a plain kind of color, or they have it sparkle or something like that. No, it changes color, and if you get a UV light, you can even write things on it. It's just temporary, then it starts to change and shift the color again. Now the weight of it is very good. It's only 180 grams, and then the thickness too, nice and slim. For once, we've got a slim phone here that is 7.4 millimeters. It's again a nice welcome change here to have a slimmer, lighter phone. So it curves off at the edges here. The back glass, the front glass too, does have a curvature to it. Now, I'm someone who really likes to have a flat screen, but I don't mind it too much. It's not an excessive curve. The colors do shift out a little. Now, screen size, we are looking at here 6.78 inches. It's an AMOLED 120 Hz HDR10+ support. I'll get onto that shortly. Now, the bezels around the outside, they do look pretty good. Standard right there. And we've got a interesting front-facing camera. Now, why it is interesting? Because it has autofocus at this price point, very good. It supports 4K video, and it's 50 megapixels. I'll be testing it out later on in the video, of course, and it does support face unlocking. So the fingerprint unlocking, I'll demonstrate that again, that it is pretty quick there. You can see the animation slows it down, makes it look a little slow. I'll do that one more time. That was very fast that time. Along the bottom, we have a SIM tray that does take 2 nano SIMs, so no micro SD card support, microphone, and a Type-C port, so it's USB 2.0 speeds only, no video out, loudspeaker, and up the top here, you'll see we've just got a microphone, and it does say here professional portrait. So what's missing? This is one of the cons, the downsides of this phone, is it doesn't have stereo loudspeakers, so it's just this single loudspeaker down the bottom. I don't know why they've done this. Maybe it was the cost of having that 50 megapixel autofocus 4K front camera. Then the rear cameras, we've got a main camera that is 50 megapixels with optical image stabilization and also electronic with 4K, but only this rear one because electronic 4K with the front camera doesn't seem to be working at the moment at the time of this video. An 8 megapixel ultra wide, yes, another 8 megapixel ultra wide and 2 megapixel macro camera. Oh dear, I really wish they would stop doing this. I'd rather have a improved 13 or 16 megapixel ultra wide, or even a 12 megapixel one, as long as it's got autofocus, or it's even just better than the 8 megapixel. And then this here, which is the Aura Light. So it's a ring flash setup there, which is more powerful and a little bit different from what we get with other phones. Now, a little bit more on this screen. As I mentioned, it is a 6.78 inch screen, 120 Hz. It is AMOLED. And there is a curvature to the glass on the screen that you do notice a little bit, but it makes, you could say, yes, the swiping, the gestures a little nicer. Now, if I hold it at an angle, you'll see it shifts out a little, the color on the edges. It'll go darker here and brighter on that side, depending how you look at it. But when you're normally looking at it straight on, isn't too much of a problem. But I will say that I would have preferred a flat screen. I'm just a flat screen type of guy. I just love them. Screen refresh rate can be overridden. You can set it to 60 Hz if you want to save on battery. Unfortunately, there's no 90 Hz option, which would have been great to have. Now, you're seeing here that it doesn't mention anything about DC dimming. Now, you can adjust the white balance here. You've got different color modes, which is great, but DC dimming does not seem to be listed anywhere here Not that I've actually needed it. I have not seen any flicker with this screen at all. So I'll dim it right down there, and you can see that, no, I don't see any flicker. Even on camera, it shouldn't be happening at all. Now, the brightness, it tops out at about 700 nits. It gets quite bright, and you can make it out in direct sunlight. So overall, for an AMOLED screen, very good. Touch response has been excellent. I can't complain about the screen at all. Now, the resolution is just that full HD plus resolution. So we're looking at 1080 by 2400 pixels, which gives us a sharp 388 ppi. Now, it runs FunTouch OS, and it is their version 13 based on Android 13, and the performance, very good. I would rate this as performance-wise definitely better than MIUI. It has not exhibited any lags. Now, I've got 8 gigabytes of RAM here with 256 gigabytes of storage, and it's good, really good performance here. Now, you get a lot of different options in the settings and everything that I won't go through, but I like how the toggles load in. And your notifications really quick. You just don't get annoying lags, and the fingerprint reader so far has been pretty solid there, so that is great. And I am on the latest firmware at the time of this video. Bloatware, yes, it is present. Sadly, they have crammed on quite a few bloatware applications, as you can see. Like, we've got Spotify, TikTok, a few other bits and pieces. Sure, they've got their Vivo apps on there as well. So there's a little bit of that you need to clean up when you first get it, but it's tame, relatively tame compared to some other brands out there. Like Realme, for example, or Xiaomi, they put a lot of bloatware, and I count sometimes over 20 applications, over 3 gigabytes worth. Now, if you're recording video, the audio bitrate is good to see here that it's 256 kilobits per second, so they haven't given us that horrible 96 kilobits per second that can sound quite scratchy and just a little bit too compressed. Widevine level 1 cert, yes, that is present, which is great. And the internal storage here, we are looking at UFS 3 here, 3.1, and good speeds and good random reads and writes. Sorry, UFS 2.2, I believe it is. I haven't actually been given the exact UFS spec, but I believe it's 2.2. I can kind of tell from those speeds there, because 3.1 would be a lot faster than that. So for a mid-range chipset that is fine, and performance-wise, battery looking really good actually, a lot better than I was expecting, especially with this style of phone. That I was surprised by this result here. Now, 13 hours, this is not a realistic result, but it's the test I do in my other reviews of phones. Realistically, you're looking around about 9 hours of screen on time, 8 to 9 hours. So that puts it in par with, well, on par with my Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra, which can get similar kind of results, up to about 8 hours. Now, it will charge in, this is cut short here, it took about 41 minutes to fully charge it at that 66 watts, the 4,600 milliamp hour battery, which isn't too bad at all. Anything that's under an hour, I don't find as bad at all nowadays. Sure, it doesn't beat some of those phones that have 120 watt charging that can do it in 20 minutes. It's still a respectable speed, however. And then this is very good. So it has the Dimensity 7200, and the result here shows that it's pretty good. It's mid-range nowadays, this kind of score, but a couple of years ago, that would have been almost flagship kind of scores, over 600,000, but very decent. And you'll see that where a lot of the score is gained here is the GPU performance, which is pretty good. Again, for this kind of price point, you'll find it is better than other phones out there that are running the Dimensity 1080. No, but this Dimensity 7200 is a lot better in the GPU department with the Mali G610 with its 4 cores. Audio, sadly, there is no 3.5mm headphone jack, so you need to use one of these. But the big downside to this phone is it's only got the single speaker down the bottom here. Now, the sample I will play you will be at 100% volume, and you hear that it sounds all right, but of course, it's just coming out there. It would have been so good if we had a top stereo speaker there too as well. Now, voice calls, fine, I've had no issues. So I'll play this track now from one of my videos at 100% volume, just to give you an idea of what it sounds like. Gaming performance with Genshin Impact on the top settings here. The V27 performs well thanks to that Dimensity 7200. It doesn't really have any major lags. Now, the frame rate's not amazing. It's not constantly 60 frames per second, but more like in the 40s that I'm seeing with the performance. But it's so much better than this phone right here with the Dimensity 1080. This is the Redmi Note 12 Pro Plus that I've just reviewed, selling for about the same price, and it's often quite laggy and choppy with the same exact settings, but no, not here with the Vivo V27. Over to the cameras. So this X27 has 4K with a front-facing camera. However, when you shoot with 4K, it doesn't have any electronic image stabilization, so you probably want to use a gimbal. If you go over then to 1080p, however, you can shoot with electronic image stabilization. I'll test it out now. This is now 1080p 30, and it's their steady phase electronic image stabilization. You can see it's a lot steadier than the 4K footage I just showed you before. So if you're going to be moving around a lot, you probably want to shoot with this electronic image stabilization versus the shaky 4K footage. With the rear camera, we do have electronic image stabilization, 4K 30, 4K 60. I'm shooting in 4K 30 because that matches my videos, the timelines. So this e-bike here that we have is one that I'm going to be reviewing in the channel soon, and it's called the Utopia Cord if anyone's interested. So far it's really good. 700C wheels, it's got even GPS and a few other smart features and whatnot with it. So this camera quality here is looking pretty good. I'm just going to jog ahead to show you that the stabilization is fairly good, this electronic image stabilization. And when I pan around, I don't really see too much of that annoying judder. Not with this Dimensity 7200, sorry. The audio bit rate is 256 kilobits per second, and what we're looking at here, if you're wondering, well, this is called fire. This is a fire, las fires, in the community Valencia in Spain. This is something they do. So they make these effigies, and then later they end up burning them. Yes, that's right, they burn these down. And some camera samples. So this is the main camera here, a shot of my cat Vera, and you can see that her white fur, especially on the right side of her face, is a little overexposed with this particular picture here. Front-facing selfie shot here, so it does tend to capture quite a bit of detail, the selfie camera, with the V27, thanks to that 50 megapixel shooter that it does have. Rear camera portrait. Now this shot of my daughter here came out okay, but you can see it's a little bit blurry. That's because it is low light at the moment, and I do think she was moving about a bit, and I had people next to me moving. So it's a good real-world test too of the portrait mode. The weakness of the cameras is this, the ultra-wide, which is 8 megapixels, and this happens with a lot of other brands that I'm currently reviewing. They use these 2 megapixel macro cameras, 8 megapixel cameras that are ultra-wides. Not particularly amazing quality. I mean, we're great that we've got an ultra-wide camera, don't get me wrong. I just wish it was a bit better than this particular sensor and lens setup. This is our main sensor again, so that 50 megapixel camera, it's an okay shot, perhaps a little bit too bright there. And then moving over to a low light, I think the low light performance is quite good. It does take advantage of the optical image stabilization, so it uses a slightly longer shutter rate there to let in a little bit more light. And it's of course taking various different photos here and layering them all on top with the night mode. So the night mode I think is pretty good, and the sign here, neon sign in the background, that blue one came out the blue it should have been. So the color balance tended to be reasonably correct. Over in Europe, they use a lot of yellow lights, not white lights, but yellow street lights. So if it's got a yellow tint to it, that is actually more accurate. Now, I don't know the exact final EU pricing yet for it, but I've got an idea. I think it's going to be just under 400 euros, or maybe about, say, 460 or something. Now, that puts it in the same league as other mid-range phones like the Xiaomi Redmi Note 12 Pro Plus that I have just reviewed and covered in the channel. This is superior, this phone, in every single way apart from the charging rate of that phone, which is 120 watts. It takes about 20 minutes, but this is not bad. It's around about 40 minutes to fully charge it with the 66 watt charging. However, you gain then a much better front-facing camera that's got autofocus. It's 4K. You can shoot 4K video with the front-facing camera. But sadly, at the time of this video, as you saw from my sample, it does not have any electronic image stabilization. So I hope Vivo fixes that. The rear camera can do it. Now the in-screen fingerprint reader there is working very well. Face unlocking is working fine there. Battery life seems to be very good on this model. So around about 8 to 9 hours of screen on time is possible with the 4,600 milliamp hour battery. And then the chipset, the Dimensity 7200, not bad at all. Games really well and can play, as I showed you, demanding games like Genshin Impact with way less frame dips and lag that I did experience with the Dimensity 1080, which sells for about the same price. So I hope that Vivo does continue this trend of releasing phones that, for about the same price, are a lot better than the competitors out there. And even FunTouch OS, I'm starting to enjoy it, like it, because it's really well optimized. It doesn't seem to be any bugs, certainly better than MIUI. And the only real big downside to this particular mobile is the single loudspeaker at the bottom. Now I can tell that Vivo did up the volume of it. They tried to make it the best sounding as possible single loudspeaker setup, but still it should have a secondary loudspeaker so we get stereo there. So thank you so much for watching my review here of the Vivo V27.